Right now on Close Up, one-on-one with Kelly Garcia. We sit down with the director of the Iowa Department of Human Services to talk about why the state did not want to house migrant children from the southern border. Also, we ask Garcia about the news surrounding the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and how it will impact the state's pandemic response. Plus, water quality in Iowa, the new report that ranks the Raccoon River among the worst waterways in the nation. Hear from the Des Moines Waterworks CEO about what needs to be done at a state level to solve this problem. Close Up starts right now.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning and thank you for joining us. I'm Scott Carpenter. Earlier this month, Governor Reynolds said she declined to take in children who are being held at the southern border. The governor says that was the recommendation she received from Kelly Garcia, who serves in two roles as the director of Iowa DHS and director of Iowa Department of Public Health. KCCI's Tommy Clark got to sit down one-on-one with Garcia to ask her more about this decision.
All right, so welcome to the Director of Human Services, Kelly Garcia. Thank you for making time for us for this interview.
Happy to be here.
So we're going to start with talking about Governor Kim Reynolds rejecting unaccompanied minors, accepting them into the state of Iowa. So you gave that guidance saying Iowa is not in a position to take unaccompanied minors. A lot of people are trying to understand, we've always been a very welcoming state, welcoming immigrants. So I guess we want to know, why are we not accepting these children? It's a complicated issue. So tell us more about why it's a no.
Absolutely. So first, I think you hit the nail on the head here. Iowa does have a steeped tradition in welcoming refugees and immigrants, and I hold that dear. It's one of the reasons I wanted to come to this state. And the second part is I'm a mom of young kids, so this is a heartbreaking issue to watch young children, particularly 3 and 5, who can't yet vocalize exactly where they're going and don't probably understand what's happening. And the desperation that a parent has to make that choice, I can't fathom. At the same time, as an administrator of this agency, I have to be prepared to take that on. And it is a complicated issue. So we have to think about all of the things that a child needs once we accept them into our system. Social workers to oversee their safety and welfare, either residential providers or families to take those children in, medical care, schooling, bilingual families, and a whole host of other supports that any human needs to live. And then those children live somewhere between foster care and another space. And so things like consent, who makes the decision for those children, are unclear. And so it is very complicated. It takes a lot of supports. This agency has been working really hard to build up its foster care network, to transition into Family First, and to really safeguard Iowa's children. And so I need to keep us on that path. We're not really in a space today to take on this additional work, and that's a hard decision, and it was hard advice that I gave the governor.
So I kind of want to dive into a few of those points.
Absolutely.
So we understand if the state were to accept unaccompanied minors, they'd be placed in group care or shelter settings, not with foster families. What kind of group facilities would they be in? Can you go on about that? What would that look like?
So Iowa has made a really aggressive shift to Family First implementation, which means that we do have more open beds in our residential providers. But those beds are kept open for our highest need children. So children, teenagers with aggressive behavior, individuals who have sexualized behavior, or other behavioral health needs that don't really fit into a family model or need more kind of one-on-one attention. We could have the option of using families, but we're not really set up today for that either.
Okay, that was my next question. Why not foster families? It's just not set up right now for that?
So we don't have a number of bilingual families in the state. And remember, these children primarily don't speak English. So that was one consideration. And then the rest of the supports, where we place them, they're in foster care, but not really in foster care. So there's not particularly a model here that works. And really, I think, the families and the wraparound supports that we have in our space today haven't shifted to this type of model. And then our social workers, right? So this is not just families welcoming children. Our system has to kick in. And we've been making tremendous progress in this state with the legislature and the governor's support to bring down our caseloads for our social workers. We're still working on that, but we're not quite there. I think the biggest thing here too is the pandemic, right? We're a year and a half out of the pandemic, and we're seeing cases in our foster care system today that leave me incredibly concerned. And so my obligation is to make sure that our system remains focused on Iowa's children.
The governor said we already have a problem, and you've said as well, placing Iowa children. Can you go on about how big is this issue? Is this a pretty big issue in Iowa that needs to be addressed?
It's really about the kids that have the highest needs. So we're really, the space that we're really working on, we have an incredible network and really have made tremendous progress on placing most of our youth who are in foster care with families, with people who are relative placements or are like relatives to them. So we call them fictive kin. The space where we're really trying to hone in is around our highest needs kids. And that's where we reserve those residential beds or specialty foster care homes for kids with the highest needs. Again, behavioral health issues and the like. And we still have work to do there.
Okay. And you did kind of dive into it would require additional supports like schooling, medical, behavioral care. It would increase caseloads for social workers. You said that too. You've outlined a lot of reasons not to, but are there any reasons that we should? Any reasons that you can see us doing this in the near future? Would you ever rethink it?
I think one of the things that we really need to hear from our federal partners. You know, if they present a package of supports, funding supports, and other supports like translation, potentially we could reconsider. That plan has not been outlined from our federal partners yet, and that's a big sticking point for us as an agency about how we would shift and implement. Certainly, that door could always be open as we learn more and as the need evolves.
Up next, we ask about the state's response to the coronavirus pandemic. We'll be right back.
This morning.
Welcome back to Close Up. KCCI's Tommy Clark wraps up her conversation with Kelly Garcia, the director of Iowa Department of Human Services and Department of Public Health.
Several groups are urging, I'm sure you've seen there's multiple groups out there right now, urging the governor to change her mind, to reconsider. Is there anything else Iowa could do to help? Is there anything Iowans can do, Iowa families, that they can be doing to help these people in need?
So I think thinking about charitable contributions, you know, there are states who are looking at placing minors, but I think these, you know, bigger philanthropic efforts are a place where Iowans can contribute, and that always feels good to make an impact.
Is there anything else on this topic, because I'm sure that you just get questions about this all the time, anything else that you just want Iowans to know on this topic that they need to keep in mind Anything else?
I think the biggest point is that these youth placed in our state wouldn't just be here for a few moments. It would be Iowa's obligation to place them with forever families. And that's hard work. That's really hard work. And it's meaningful, impactful work. It's something that we do. You know, I myself and my team are dedicated to serving vulnerable Iowans. We do this work every day. But this is a bit different. And so it makes it significantly more complex.
So switching gears, of course, we got to talk about COVID-19.
Of course.
Of course. So to start, just a synopsis. How do you think, 1 year later, how are we doing as a state when it comes to COVID-19, kind of an overarching picture?
So we're still very much in our response, but I say this a lot, but there definitely is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's vaccine. So we're really, the space that we're most focused on is continuing to understand what variants look like in our state, but really focusing on vaccine administration and distribution. We need Iowans to get vaccinated.
Yes. And we were talking off camera about the Johnson & Johnson announcement. CDC and FDA now recommend pausing use of that vaccine due to a growing number of reports of a rare and severe type of blood clot after vaccination. What is your take on that? And that's pretty big news when we only have so many vaccines in our state.
Yes, certainly. And I don't think they'd make that decision, because it's a very big one, if they didn't have reason to. They're going to be sorting through it. And my understanding after taking an early phone call this morning and learning a bit more is that it really is around the treatment of this rare condition that they want to make sure they equip providers to recognize, understand, and move through. I think we still need everyone to take the first available vaccine. And we have plenty of capacity in the state today, and that's wonderful news.
Yeah, something we'll have to work through.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, I want to ask about, are you concerned about the UK variant? Because we've got news about how big that is in Iowa, spreading. Are you concerned? And can you talk about the UK variant in Iowa?
Sure, of course. So every living organism is going to morph and change. It's how we survive, right? So the virus is going to do the same. This won't be the last variant we see. We have incredible partners at our state hygienic lab who are sequencing cases so that we understand if new variants pop up in Iowa. What we know about the variant is that it is more easily transmissible. So we know that. What do we do about it? We continue to take all of the mitigation efforts that we know work. We mask when we can't socially distance. We wash our hands. We stay home when we're sick. And we get vaccinated.
Well said. Do you feel with this new variant, with the UK variant in Iowa, that unvaccinated children are safe in school?
School, this has been a balanced decision from the get-go. I'm tremendously proud of the work that we've done in equipping students to be safe. My own child goes to in-person school and has this entire year. Children spread disease in school. We know that. But we also know that children have less effect of this virus. Does it mean that it can't happen in school? It means that school is not the center of a major outbreak. And we're still seeing that today. Mask usage is working. We're seeing incredibly low rates of flu this year, unbelievably low rates of flu this year. And that means that these mitigation efforts work. We do hope to have a vaccine for children and adolescents on the horizon in the near future. In fact, Pfizer's pushed through some information to the CDC FDA and CDC for consideration.
Yeah, on the horizon. And then I just want to ask, how would you rate Iowa's response, overall opinion on the past year, how it's gone? How has the department handled the year that has been 2020 into 2021?
So there's certainly spaces where I think we would probably change the way we approached things, but we made the very best decisions possible with given information at the time, and you have to move through that quickly because this response requires incredibly quick decisions. And then I think the space that I am tremendously proud of is not only the work ethic that I've seen from this team, not only at the state level, but for our local officials as well. Just heroic efforts. And then the need to be flexible, to morph, change, because we were asked to make decisions around something that no one knew what the best course of action was. I think we have proven that we've done that, and we continue to strive to be more transparent, open with the public, so that Iowans can make the best decisions for them to keep themselves safe.
Yeah. Is there anything else that just, whether you get questions about a lot that you'd want to address, or just addressing COVID-19 in general? Because we've really gone from talking about COVID-19, what is this, to vaccine. That's the big topic right now. Anything else you just think is important for Iowans to know right now?
Absolutely. So I have been talking about this and reflecting on the last year. And of course, my own role has changed. I was just DHS director, and now I'm the director of both agencies. So I'm seeing this from a more connected viewpoint. You know, I liken this to the tsunami. I'm sure most Iowans will remember that. You see this giant wave rolling in. It's devastating. There's clear devastation. But when it rolls out, it's worse. I think we're starting to see, and I'm going to connect this back to our previous conversation around child welfare cases. We're seeing some cases right now, not a huge number of them, but the type of cases are incredibly concerning. They involve failure of mandatory reporters to report. They involve children who were somewhat invisible because of online schooling. That worries me. So my job over the course of the next year, beyond the continued rollout of the vaccine, is to really think about the spaces in our system, in our collective healthcare system, where there are fractures, and to work on connecting those. Really shore up those fractures and make sure that we allow all Iowans to receive the services that they need at the earliest intervention timeframe.
Okay. Director Kelly Garcia, thank you so much for joining us. You have so many roles. You're making an impact on Iowa, so thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Water quality in Iowa, the new report that ranks the Raccoon River among the worst waterways in the nation.
They say when you come from a small town like
Well, a river crucial to Des Moines' drinking water supply is now one of the most endangered rivers in the country. American Rivers is an environmental group that puts the Raccoon River at number 9 on its most endangered list. KCCI's Cynthia Fodor spoke with the head of Des Moines Waterworks, Ted Corrigan.
That the Raccoon River is on the list of what, the top 10 or bottom 10?
Yeah, and most
however you look at it. Of the most endangered rivers. Sounds like that's no surprise to you, Ted.
It really isn't a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, I don't think. The raccoon has been on the impaired waters list for years for both nitrate and bacteria, and it's a drinking water source for 500,000 people in central Iowa. So the combination of those two seems obvious it would qualify it as endangered.
And your response when you saw that?
You know, just continued concern. I think it's just another example of why we need to do more on the water quality, water conservation side. It's an opportunity for us to share our message and to make sure that people understand that there is still an issue with water quality, and then not just on the raccoon, also on the Des Moines. When the Waterworks lawsuit went away a few years ago, the water quality problems did not go away. They're still there, and in fact, in some ways, getting worse.
And explain to folks, where does this pollution come from?
You know, the pollution is, I like to say, surface water quality is local. And what happens in your locality has the most impact on the quality of the surface water. And in our locality, it's a land use question. So things that happen on the land have an impact on water quality in our surface waters.
So are we mostly talking about nitrates?
You know, I think the primary concerns today are nitrate, phosphorus, and bacteria. All three of those things are very impactful on water quality. And the nitrate and phosphorus especially contribute to algae blooms, or in some cases, harmful algae blooms, which are starting to generate toxins in our rivers on an annual basis. And that's becoming one of our biggest concerns, is algal toxins.
And the group that put out this report, American Rivers, says that Iowa's voluntary nutrient management strategy is not working.
Right. You know, the nutrient reduction strategy is Iowa's stated policy for water quality improvement. The fact that it's voluntary is troubling to us, and I think this just highlights the fact that the state of Iowa really needs to take the lead here. They need to develop an implementation plan for the nutrient reduction strategy, a schedule. They need to properly fund it, and they need to get it done.
So right now it's voluntary, just encouraging farmers to use conservation practices, right? But you think we need more regulations along those lines?
You know, I think the state needs to develop an implementation plan, and whether the plan would be regulatory or whether it would be funded or what the strategy would be is really up to them. But there needs to be expectation. It needs to be something that everyone is required to do at the same level to level the playing field. It feels like voluntary is really unfair to folks who want to do the right thing, because if they're competing against folks who aren't going to do the thing, whatever that is, it makes it more expensive for them. And so having a system where there's only voluntary seems unfair. We would like to see the state take the lead in developing an implementation plan and a schedule and applying that evenly across the landscape at scale.
Well, and still ahead on KCCI Close Up, how Des Moines Waterworks plans to clean up drinking water.
It's the extreme deal of the day.
Welcome back to Close Up. KCCI's Cynthia Fodor wraps up her conversation with the Des Moines Waterworks about their solutions to make drinking water clean and safe.
So what are some of the things you're doing? You said that could serve as a model. I read that you're possibly looking into drilling some wells.
Yeah, drilling the wells is something that we're doing in an attempt to find a more protected source. So we have a number of source waters here for Des Moines Waterworks. We use direct surface water from both the Des Moines and the Raccoon Rivers. We also use shallow groundwater that we collect from the sand and gravel along the river. And we find that the quality of that water is a little better. It's just better protected from what happens on the surface. We are looking at the option of drilling some wells along the Des Moines River, kind of north of Des Moines, that would allow us to collect significantly more of that shallow groundwater, water that we think would start out cleaner and be protected from nitrates and algae and the algal toxins. That's something that we can do to ensure that we have a good quality source to start with. That's not something that will be a model for anyone else. That's just something that we're going to do as the water provider to ensure that we have a good quality source.
Because as you alluded to, you can drill these wells or clean up the water as it comes into the waterworks and put in more equipment and all that, but it really something needs to happen at the source, right?
Absolutely. We strongly believe that building more facilities and doing more treatment is not the solution here. And as an example, 30 years ago, we built a nitrate removal facility here at the Fluor Drive treatment plant to address nitrate contamination in the water. Nitrate contamination is still a concern. The facility is still here, still in operation, but now we're starting to see other concerns related to nutrients in the water. Specifically, we're seeing microcystin, an algal toxin in the Des Moines River, which is the result of harmful algae blooms, which are the result of nutrients in the river. So building yet another facility to remove microcystin, that isn't the answer, because the question becomes, well, what's next? Are we just going to continue to build process after process after process, or are we going to keep the pollution out of the water to begin with, keep the nutrients on the landscape where they belong and where they can do some good and clean up the rivers instead of treating in a whole series of contaminants that develop over time?
Thank you for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close Up. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you back here next Sunday, same time.